Perfect. That's amazing. Wow, it's so weird that now I cannot see you guys, but
I know.
anyway. So hi everybody. I'm very happy that we can meet like this online, and thank you so much for Outriders and Jakub for organizing this event. I'm Blanka Zöldi. I'm based in Hungary, and I work for a nonprofit investigative journalism center, which is called Direkt 36. We mostly operate from our readers' support. So I'm in a lucky situation of being able to write independently about whatever I want in Hungary. But now we see that the one and biggest single topic what interests people is coronavirus coverage. So I thought that I would share my experience and the challenges that we face in this area. And I'm very sorry, but I'm only able to stay with you until noon. So here you see my contact details. So if you have like any comments or questions, please get in touch with me like after this online event. So let's jump into it. So a little bit about the political background in Hungary. We have Viktor Orbán's government in power since 2010, and actually for this government, the usual communication tactics about anything is being in a constant war. Let it be, for example, the IMF back in the days, or the European Union later, who is threatening our nation's sovereignty. Then later it became the migration crisis, and Soros itself, who wants to flood Europe with migrants. And recently, actually, this rhetoric has changed towards the coronavirus itself, which is also, again, an enemy that we have to defeat as such. So what we can see is that the government and Viktor Orbán himself is very much present in the media. In social media, for example, they have a very impressive output, always portraying the prime minister visiting hospitals in mosque, being there, out there in the field, protecting the nation. On the upper right corner, actually, you can see a small snippet from a video that was done by the government, portraying all of the people from the government who are involved in fighting the crisis as superheroes, basically. So what we can see that they enjoy communicating about this crisis quite a lot, and we have a very massive pro-government media empire joined with the state media, which is always portraying all of the events quite similarly as the official government discourse is going. What we can see is there are sometimes a little bit of confusion, and probably the government is not very used to this type of crisis communication. So we had a couple of instances when, for example, Viktor Orbán was saying that a very important message to the nation will be delivered through his Facebook, in a Facebook Live event. And then too many people try to watch the big declaration, and then the whole system broke down, and he didn't have sound while he was talking and stuff. And another case, for example, when Viktor Orbán said in the morning that he doesn't think that the schools should be closed down, but by the evening he changed his mind, and he actually announced that the schools would be closed down. But one of the biggest pro-government TV channels didn't really get the update by the evening, and in the evening they still said that it would be horrible for the economy if the schools were closing down. But what we can see in this government communication, that although lots of information is put out, what is being put out is completely controlled by the government. You can see in the lower right corner a so-called operative task force, which is set up by the government and basically handling the coronavirus situation, and also holds press conferences, daily press conferences. But the thing is that these press conferences happen online, and you have to send questions as journalists in advance. and they basically filter out the questions that they would like to answer. And what happens most of the time is the pro-government media gets answers to the questions, while independent media's questions is getting ignored most of the times. So what we have actually from independent journalists about the coronavirus coverage is obviously the daily news, what's happening, which is really important because, as Jakub also mentioned, it seems that people are extremely interested still in coronavirus coverage, and we have seen news sites readership increased massively. For every pieces of news, the readership is in the skies, basically. The other thing is that what the government has been failing to do for quite a long time is to publish proper data about the coronavirus. For a long time, they didn't publish, for example, only the number of sick patients and only the number of deaths, but they didn't publish territorial data or data about the age of the deceased people. But after the push of the journalists, they actually agreed to publish this data, which is available all over Europe. And there is another investigative journalism website called Outriders, who are doing a great job in actually putting this data into a nice format for everybody to be able to consume that. We also have lots of testimonials from patients. So actually journalists go out and collect the experience of the patients who get into hospitals, asking very relevant questions like why they are not getting tested when they show symptoms, how the hospitals are prepared for this crisis and these kind of things. We have, I think, quite a good socioeconomic reporting, meaning that beyond the daily news coverage, many journalists have started to concentrate on, for example, the disadvantaged groups as well in Hungary, for example, going to very poor regions of the country to ask very relevant questions as, okay, that we know that, for example, in Budapest, in the capital, we are washing our hands for 1 minute every time. But what happens in areas where people don't even have running water in their homes? How will they have proper access to healthcare, for example? And also, there's a lot of reporting going on about what will happen after the crisis. How many people are losing their jobs? What type of measures the government is planning to do? Also, there have been very good reporting about what is happening behind the scenes, meaning, for example, the secret decisions. I mean, what were the talks, behind the separate decisions? For example, as I mentioned, the decision about closing down schools, who advised Orbán when they actually decided on the different moves to get forward in mitigating the crisis. And last but not least, what I've been seeing is that we have an immense international attention, mostly based on the problems with checks and balances in our democracy, saying that Orbán is actually using this virus situation to introduce a more dictatorship-like functioning of our country, because they have passed a law which allows the government to rule with decrees, and a little bit of modification in the laws about spreading fake news. And we have seen Guardian, Washington Post, I don't even know how many newspapers dealing with the problems in Hungary. What I think is a little bit unproportionate, honestly, meaning that, for example, until today, journalists can work very much freely, as much as I notice. But I hope that I will stay as optimistic later on as well. So what we miss from the coverage, mostly what I feel in our own reporting as well. It's very difficult to get information from straight from the hospitals, which I thought would be really easy at the beginning. When I started to report in this crisis, I was mostly interested in the availability of different protective equipment. So I was contacting all the hospitals in Hungary just to ask, like, hey, what do you have? What do you miss? Do you have any idea how people could help you, for example, or the government? How much equipment should they deliver to you? And the hospitals completely refrained from actually answering. And the other thing is that also workers in the hospitals who work under immense pressure, sometimes it seems that they are afraid still to speak out, being afraid on the one hand of losing their jobs, on the other hand is that they're afraid of causing a panicky situation. And we have also heard about cases when actually people who are working in COVID centers are asked to actually sign some documents saying that they will not disseminate information that could harm the reputation of the hospital. So it's quite complicated to get kind of people talking about the real situation that is going on the ground. The other thing is what we are very much missing is a more transparent communication from the side of the government about how public money is spent during these difficult times. And this is where actually I feel that we as investigative journalists has a very big responsibility, because even when all the world is trying to compete with each other, actually in getting the necessary equipment and doing everything as fast as possible to mitigate the crisis, I'm quite convinced that we still want to preserve a sense of transparency and the sense of actually useful spending of public money. So what I want to say actually that we really, really miss mostly, not only Hungary, but in many countries, is a quality type of investigative stories behind this crisis. And I don't think it's a thing that can happen like very quickly. We cannot really compete with daily information, and we need more time to actually follow up what has been happening behind the scenes during the crisis. And I'm convinced that there will be more and more stories even in the next couple of months coming out about this coronavirus pandemic. So as I mentioned, we are an investigative journalism center, so we have been trying to go a little bit deeper than daily news coverage. So just very quickly, I would like to show a couple of articles that we have done in Direkt 36. The first article that we made was about how the whole healthcare system was basically reorganized in the past 15 years, showing that it's both the responsibility of the current and the previous governments, that the healthcare system and the epidemiological system is not very well prepared for tackling the coronavirus in Hungary. Another interesting case was that in the first days in Hungary, the first affected people of coronavirus were Iranian students. So the government tried to frame the whole virus as something that was brought into Hungary by migrants, as being kind of a proof that the open liberal democracies are actually like a straight threat to people's health. And one of my colleagues wrote an article about basically how hypocritical it is from the government to say that Iranian students were the ones to blame for the coronavirus, while the government and the Hungarian state has been having a very friendly relationship with Iran, also inviting, for example, Iranian students to the country before. And just last week, I published an article about public procurements in Hungary, about where do we get face masks and other protective equipment from to our country. And the very interesting thing is that, as I told you, it's very difficult to get public information about this. We don't have time actually to go into public information request trials, you know, to wait like months for the answers. So we have to look for other means to actually follow where the money is going. And we are really happy actually that that Orbán and the other government members are publishing Facebook videos, because this picture, for example, is taken from a video when Orbán went to the Budapest airport to receive some protective equipment, and he was observing all the masks coming from China on the plane, and there was this guy on the left that he greeted with an elbow bump and everything, and he was very grateful for him, saying that thank you so much for actually getting these equipments that arrived to Hungary. And talking to sources, actually I figured out who this guy was and what we could get an information on, that he is actually the son of the deputy CEO of the company who won tons of public procurement to get these masks, and he is working at the ministry, this young guy, which is actually responsible for procuring the equipment. So that was quite an interesting detail that arises from Facebook videos. And actually just last night as well, another Hungarian news site published a very interesting piece I found about one of the testing kits that arrived from China, saying that it didn't have the necessary documents to be, or they had like very shady documents which were not really authorizing the company to sell these testing kits in Europe. And the interesting thing is that we didn't get an answer about which companies are producing the equipments that are being delivered to Hungary, but this outlet only spotted a picture uploaded by the government news agency about this medical equipment, and just spotted the name on the box. So I think that these difficult times, when it's very difficult to access information, also gives us like an opportunity to look for new ways and be actually better journalists, to look for details, and well, also to work together more. And I think that's it, all what I wanted to say. So I stop sharing my screen.
Great, thank you very much. You know, just one quick comment. It's like, I think only great Viktor Orbán could, you know, hack Facebook and take down its live feed. But there is a question from you, from Roberto from Brazil. And he says that the Minister of Health also stopped promoting physical press conferences. Journalists are getting just press releases. What do you think of this, and how we can target this approach?
Well, I'm sorry to hear that Brazil is facing a very similar situation as we are facing in Hungary. The thing what we are doing is that we still send questions to these online press conferences. My mic is on, right? You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Okay, so don't stop trying. You might get lucky. This is one of my advice. The other advice is that we still use our legal means to actually get information. So we still have freedom of information laws. So just yesterday, for example, I submitted a couple of freedom of information requests about public spending to different ministries. I will have to wait 15 days, and probably I will have to go to court to get the necessary information, but just wait it out. The crisis will be over, and I think it's paying off for journalists to be patient and actually count on information that can come in later on. And also the other thing is that if public officials don't answer, which we have been facing already, not only during the coronavirus times, but other times as well during our usual work, you have to look for other possibilities to get the information. You have to develop like sources within the public institutions, for example, who can leak you data if that's possible. As I showed, you can also just look for different traces online to get like mini information and then follow that up. So yeah, we need to be more creative, I think, in case we don't receive proper answers.
Okay, and there's one more from Marcin. It's a long one, and I'm going to try to read it out. So international media reported about Mr. Orban grab on power and possibility to rule by decree. What is more, they reported that it would be up to Mr. Orban to decide when state of emergency will end and when to stop rule by decree. Is it really exaggerated by those media, and Hungarian people has no concerns about this situation?
I think it is a little bit exaggerated. This is what I felt when there was a Monday when the law was passed, and I was contacted very quickly by like 15 different international journalists to give interviews about whether, oh my God, now Hungary is a dictatorship and now this is all happening. And to everybody I was saying that, well, look, Orban has been in power since 2010. He has had 2/3 majority, supermajority in the parliament for a very long time, and he has never needed any law in order to pass whatever they wanted, actually. So if you're worried about Hungary, you shouldn't start worrying about it now. On the other hand, for example, the fact that the state of emergency will last however long they want, I wouldn't think that I mean, I hope I'm not too optimistic about it, but I don't think that they would abuse the situation. So I really believe that the government is saying that, okay, after the virus, the state of emergency is over. By the way, we are also under the state of emergency because of the migration situation, which was introduced in 2015. And in an everyday life, we don't really feel like any outcome because of that type of state of emergency. And also the other question that has been mentioned many times by international media is that now actually it can be punished, I think, according to the law, with 5 years of prison if somebody is spreading misinformation that could endanger, I don't remember the exact wording, but that could cause some problems in the society, so spreading lies. And then it was interpreted as like, oh my God, okay, so journalists are going to be put in prison in Hungary who are publishing anything about coronavirus. But the fact is that, for example, we have had this section in the penalty code for years now, only that it was punishable with 3 years imprisonment. But this law has never been actually used for concrete cases. So I would be a little bit more careful about going into whether Hungary is a dictatorship right now or not.
Okay, well, and in this positive tone, thank you very much for finding time to join us.